This is not good. Worlds are colliding.
We were smart enough to not say, Houston, there's a light out there that's following us.
And what the hell is that? You know, what is that? And I couldn't even talk. I was just amazed at what I was seeing.
This is the Beast of the Week podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, listeners of Beast of the Week podcast, weirdos with nothing better to do, we're pleased to announce today that we are going to be bringing you a special monster this week. A legend among legends. The one, the only Loch Ness Monster! Ah!
Wait, what?
Nessie.
I thought we were doing the chupacabra.
No, we pushed that back.
But I caught a live chupacabra.
Do you know what it eats? Goats, you can keep them for a while.
I don't have any. It's expensive. Goat's expensive. I bought him a bunch of oxtails and he didn't want it.
Sam, I told you before that certain dog breeds require certain financial burdens. Like a pug,
He
you wanted
shit on my bed.
You wanted a pug. It doesn't breathe, and here we are. And now it's the same thing. I told you to go get Nessie. You got a chupacabra, and now it's gonna go and get all the goats in the area that you are gonna have to pay for.
Did it shit
I don't
a
have
goat?
a big enough pool for Nessie.
I'm
Or
sorry.
do I?
You volunteered to be the person who catches all of these animals for us. You've yet to find any of them, frankly, but I'm kind of glad you didn't get the rake.
I don't know. Every night, I'm pretty sure I summon the squonk, so...
Anyways, folks, there you have it. Sam doesn't know what this show is. You are listening to the Beast of the Week podcast. I'm John Cannon.
Joe.
I'm Charlie. I'm just rolling with it.
And here is the tropical island boy that we all know and love, Manchester Sam.
Hey, welcome, man.
I don't think you can do that.
No. It stays.
No, it's from Scooby-Doo 1. It's fine.
Oh, okay.
Oh, the island one.
Yo, what's up, everybody? It's me, Samuel.
So, hello.
Oh, the live action one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good times,
Well,
damn.
yeah, clearly.
Well, we all know the beautiful, the renowned Loch Ness Monster, or
The charming.
as its lovers call it, Nessie.
Yeah.
We all,
A real maiden.
when I say the term Nessie, Loch Ness Monster, you usually get the same image in your mind. A long-necked plesiosaur, the brontosaurus of the waves, Scotland's own water snake.
No. No, nobody says that.
Some people say that.
No, they say water horse.
No, that's a different. This is the water snake.
Is it actually a different thing altogether?
It's the water snake.
I feel like okay. So Joe, let's test this one out. All right. So
All right.
I'm gonna say water horse.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna say water snake.
Yes.
All right. Now we're gonna use some analogy. Now I'm gonna say horse.
Snake horse.
Now I'm gonna say snake.
Camel.
Horse snake.
Are those two things the same?
No.
Horse and snake.
No.
That's where you're wrong. I've seen a lot of horses slither.
As this is all getting cut out.
This is good radio.
This is good radio.
Let's go back to the water snake here for a second.
All right.
All right.
So,
Was that the dramatic intro?
yeah, it was.
I'm on my way back.
But we've all seen the photo. It's black and white, it's grainy, and there is what appears to be a dinosaur in the hallowed waters of Loch Ness. Now, to understand what could be going on in Loch Ness, we have to understand the loch itself. You can't climb a mountain until you've shaken its hand.
What? What?
So the loch is it's in the Scottish Highlands, part of what is called the Great Glen, a 60-mile fault line. In this glen, there are 5 other lochs: Loch Dochfor, Loch Oich, Loch
here we
Winnie, and Loch Lockie.
Our personal favorite. Lucky.
Oh man, I'm just in a pub right now, just enjoying the decor and the.
Lockie?
Oh, I feel like I'm transported to a slightly colder area.
Out of one tropic to another.
Yeah, there's much more peat here, which the coconuts grow from.
But of all the lochs, Loch Ness is the largest, not just of the lochs, but of all freshwater bodies in the UK by volume. It is 22.5 miles at the longest, 1.5 at the widest, and it holds more water than you can think of.
Unless you think the amount, it's a lot of water.
No, it's if you think more than that, it fills up with that amount. That's part of the magic of the loch.
I'm thinking ocean. How many people are dead?
6. It's
7.
Scottish Highlands.
Damn it.
It's not a lot
Not
around.
people.
Now, the loch itself, it has a pretty interesting history. It's very old. There's an old castle on one side that I know nothing about because I researched the monster. Similarly, there's a man-made island in it called Cherry Island, which again I know nothing about because I'm transfixed on the
Wait, there's an island
water
inside of
hog.
it?
Yeah, it's
actually man-made.
it's it's called Cherry Island. Did you know that?
No.
I think we're done here. I think we can move on.
But beyond the physical features of the lake, there's also an interesting ecosystem just as it is, minus for the extremely real Loch Ness Monster. It is well known for its eel population. It has tons of eels.
Tons.
There's also pike, salmon, trout, char, and lamprey, which will fill up all kinds of gross British pies.
All just fishies?
Yeah, those are all just fish. Those are the fish that are in there.
Oh, man.
There's some interesting parts of the loch, some features that make it more questionable whether something could live in its depths. For one thing, as Sam pointed out with how his coconuts grow, the loch is full of peaty, silty water. It has extremely low visibility. There's also a significant thermocline in the loch, meaning that after 100 feet, the temperature never moves from 44 degrees Fahrenheit or whatever crazy number they call it in Scotland.
That's spooky.
And because of that, it actually makes a pretty cool effect. Because this water is always 44 below it, when the water on top gets too cold, instead of freezing, it just does a convection where the warmer water comes up top. So it never freezes, and because the warmer water's coming up, there's just always a mist, like a fog over the loch.
Which is so cool.
That is pretty neat.
If there's gonna be a lake to have a monster in it, might as well be lake fog.
Yeah.
But as with any cryptid, any critter, any beast, what is it without sightings?
Not much,
It's
honestly.
nothing.
Well, the interesting thing about the Loch Ness Monster is so many people say, oh, it started in the 30s, like that's when it really took off. But I have a good friend here. His name's Charlie Pettit, and he's going to tell us about the earliest recorded sighting of the Loch Ness Monster.
Like Johnny was just saying, most people think that it was in the 30s, but actually, in 563, a saint named Saint Columba came from Scotland. Saint Columba came to Scotland from Ireland to convert people to Christianity, which is wrong. And while he was staying in the Loch Ness area, he came to cross the River Ness, which, have we confirmed if that's real or not?
Yes.
Okay.
It's part of the Great Glen system that connects all the lochs.
In my mind, River Ness isn't real. So...
Well, we're already starting off on a skeptical foot over here.
So Saint Columba,
The geography alone isn't
Johnny-
convincing enough for
Johnny,
you.
the truth is stupid, okay?
The truth is stupid.
all right. All I'm gonna say is that maybe there's a stream, but it might not be a river.
It's a fucking river. They're connected.
There's a stream, and so Saint Columba approaches and sees these locals burying someone in the stream, and they were yelling about how a monster had gotten to them. And so Columba orders his friend to swim across the stream.
He's such a
Columba
saint.
orders his friend to swim across the river, get on the ferry on the opposite bank, and come back. Wait, why?
No,
It's because ferries.
there's a ferry's got
on, like,
it's
rope,
Yeah, it's like it's a raft tied to a rope, and you like shimmy yourself across.
But the
Oh,
ferry
because
is on
it's
the
a-
other
They're
side.
trying to get the ferry to
Yeah.
their
to get
side?
across the very real river that is more than a stream.
And this saint who's looking out for everyone's well-being tells Ronnie to go. He's like, go swim across that thing. No, do it.
You think anyone's name was Ronnie back then, Joe?
Want to bet?
Ronnie Jackson?
I'm just gonna throw it out here that there's a well-known icon of Scottish heritage that we are overlooking here.
Ronald McDonald.
Ronald MacDonald.
Oh, shit.
Oh boy.
But did he go by Ronnie?
I'm sure
He probably
among
did
close
back in the
friends he
day.
did. We've only known him in a professional setting.
That's true. All right, let's get back to St. Columba. Okay, so
Back to the
Columba
stream.
orders his friend to swim across the very real river, get the ferry on the opposite bank, and come back. And then, sure enough, with a terrible roar, the beast returned with its mouth open wide. St. Columba being a saint. I wonder if he was a saint before this.
I don't think you're allowed to be a saint when you're alive.
Okay, so Columba raised his arms, made the sign of the cross, and called on the power of God. And the monster appeared as though it was being pulled by the ropes away. Wow.
Powerful.
And that's why he became a saint.
Jesus really helped us out with that one.
Yeah. Christianity is the only true religion. And so the easy thing to say about this is that it's fake, that it's a fable, blah, blah, blah. But this tells us a lot. It tells us a lot about Loch Ness and gives specifics about the geography, such as River
The
Ness.
fuck are you talking about?
And the locals had knowledge of the beast before Columba. And
That was explained horribly.
You're doing an awful job at this. Do
The
you need some
statement.
more prompting to give me the ideas I had that I'm trying to coach you through?
yes, will you let me know what they are?
Yes,
And now I'm going to pass
Charlie.
it off to John.
Well, so as Charlie tried to do, it's easy answer to say the story is a fable, but even among, it's pretty common among saints. You got St. Patrick with snakes. You got St. George with dragon, Patrick with snakes.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you can name one other than St. Patrick, then you've already done a great job. So there goes my wager.
But they're all after angry reptiles. Jesus doesn't like them. But even if it is still a story, it tells us a few things. One, it's still specifically Loch Ness where there is a monster in the lake. And the locals in the story already knew about it. So this guy's a newcomer. It's kind of like when when Europeans came to America and we just pretended like we just figured out what a buffalo was. Like other people knew about it. We just didn't have it in our books yet. Even then, because this story wasn't written by Columba. It was written by another fella named Saint Adam Man.
Come on, you could try it one more time.
Adam Man.
Good.
Anyway, he was writing the book about Saint Columba, and so this was in the 600s. So even if it is a fake story from the 600s, it's still a fake story from the 600s about the same type of thing we're talking about in 2018.
Yep.
18.
Still is.
Good. Good. I didn't lose that much time.
All right, so basically from the year 500 something or other, from the basically 600s of that year, from Adonanus, all the way back to 1933, actually, which is kind of the beginning of all of our sightings and all the fun things that you were to think of when you think Loch Ness Monster.
Sort of yes, sort of no. Fact of the matter is, Loch Ness isn't exactly a tourist destination. There's actually only one road along it that connected one town on Loch Ness to another town on Loch Ness. People just didn't go there. Locals had stories all the time. People just didn't go there. No one really reported on Inverness.
It's true. And now they have a ton of money in tourist attractions every year. But
And we're
this is
helping
well
you.
before that.
This podcast, hopefully brought to you by Loch Ness Tourism Board. We're helping.
Come see our stuff.
Basically, one of the first notable sightings was from Arthur Grant in 1933. Now, Grant's a 21-year-old student veterinarian, an amateur motorcyclist. So the way he came
Nice.
across the monster was he was driving his nice motorcycle on his way to pick up some chicks next to Loch Ness, which there's probably 5 of them there at the time. But in any case, on his way there, he saw something crossing the road up ahead, about 20 feet ahead of him, and it was described as having a bulky body, flippers instead of legs, a very thick 6-foot tail,
Oh, God.
a long neck with
6
a
foot in
tiny
which
head.
direction?
What?
Are we talking about 6 foot wide?
I don't know, actually. Maybe it was like a square.
Man.
It was just like a really wide square.
Oh, dear goodness. That's much more horrifying than, the log.
I think it would be. It's more just like a giant snub-nosed beaver tail, and also had a skin like a whale's.
What's a whale's skin like? That's my question.
Kind of like a dinosaur.
You ever smacked a dolphin?
No.
Huh.
Have you ever smacked a dolphin?
I was unaware others hadn't.
What the
Is that
fuck?
a euphemism?
What?
No, you just go up, sit dolphin, and you let it know.
Jeez. Give it the business.
Yeah,
They're really smart.
it's a dolphin.
They're basically like people, so I approve of what you've done to them.
So basically, it's like that. And that's the way it be. Yeah, and it be like it is. So anyway, he almost hit that thing with this motorcycle, and it spooked it. So it took what was described as 2 great bounds and then disappeared under the depths of the loch. And then about, I don't know how many hours later, but it was a few hours later, he went and notified the newspaper, which is what makes it a little more significant than other sightings. He immediately went to, quote unquote, reputable source for his story.
Well, the thing is, he didn't only go to a newspaper. He went to the Veterinarian Society of Scotland, some such place,
Something like that.
Edinburgh. I don't know what's around there. I don't know Scotland. I'm sorry, Scotland. But he was a vet. He was a student veterinarian, and I think that gives more than the newspaper does because he's risking his career off of seeing some crazy old critter.
He also dropped out of school for a year after it because he said he couldn't take the pressure and harassment from the other
All right,
students.
now we're coming back around because nowadays, you can just get out of finals that way.
Back then, there was that's probably a good like 20th of his life. Or
This is where it started.
That's where it started. Back then, the pressure was too much. But yeah, he was harassed into dropping out for a year and made his way back slowly. But that was one of his claims, was that he was a veterinarian. He should probably know what animals look like, and he said it was unlike anything he had ever seen before, going so far as to say it looked like a hybrid.
But if he's a vet, not a zoologist, aren't you only like supposed to be familiar with house pets in Scotland at that point?
Unsure.
Like,
No.
But maybe they had like whales as
House
house
pets?
pets.
I
No.
doubt anyone in
like horses and
1930s.
shit.
I'm not gonna say it. I'm not even gonna justify what you had to say there.
No. They were probably a veterinarian at the time was probably taking care of like horses, cows, that kind of thing.
They weren't taking care of
Whales.
anything giant and aquatic. It could have just been a
Hippopotamus.
hippo.
Elephant.
Yeah, exactly.
The northern water elephant.
The water snake.
Oh my god.
No one could picture a water snake. You can't do it.
I've seen one.
eel.
It's
No,
terrifying.
water snake.
No, water snake. Well,
Maybe
there are.
it's just like 1,000 eels all combined.
I mean, some
eel
snakes
king.
can swim.
Do we have more sightings to talk about?
We do actually. So there's one that happened. There's actually one that happened just just before the Arthur Grant sighting called the Spicers. That one was a couple that was driving down a road that was actually on the opposite side of the loch. Sorry, the opposite side of the loch from where Arthur Grant saw it months earlier. They also wrote to a newspaper saying they were horrified and kept having flashbacks of it. They described it very similarly to the way Grant described it, both with being a large-bodied animal with almost flippers for legs. And the Spicers story made its way around the UK and became very popular. So that kind of kickstarted the whole Loch Ness Monster craze, which also then led into some real fun pictures.
Some real fun pictures. And folks, before we dive deeper into the murky waters of Loch Ness, I think we should address the several-ton Triassic era plesiosaur in the room. And that would be the surgeon's photo.
Oh, I thought it was Sam's birthday.
Oh, yes.
This,
Cut me up, Mr.
the
Surgeon.
surgeon's photo is probably the picture you all have in your mind when you think of the Loch Ness Monster, and it's the one I described at the beginning. It's the grainy black and white photo of it's a lump with a neck and a little head on the end. Everyone's seen it. Now, this one has had controversy forever. It portrays a plesiosaur, which among the Nessie community is already questionable as to if it's actually a Nessie. And the plain fact is, it is a documented hoax. And I am a big fan of cryptozoology, and I will give everything credit. But this one the story itself is really cool as to how it's a hoax. So I would like to bring you through the steps that led to the most famous picture, probably second to the Patterson footage of Bigfoot,
yeah, actually.
in like famous cryptozoology pictures. So it all started when one man, a big game hunter by the name of Marmaduke Wetherell. Yeah, I guess he pulled away from his owner on the leash and got out of the Sunday strips.
I forgot about his name.
And
why doesn't anyone name their kids Marmaduke anymore?
Because of a big giant dog.
because of
One dog ruined
because of Scooby Doo without a few brain cells.
Marmaduke.
Anyway, so our good friend Marmaduke, he reported seeing footsteps around the shore of Loch Ness, footprints from a monster. They looked, they looked like a monster's footprints would. You'd all know. And so he went and he brought this news to the Daily Mail, who eventually found the fact that these were imprints left from an elephant foot umbrella stand that had been pressed in the mud, which that explanation alone is so before our time.
An elephant? A what?
So someone would go and they'd hunt an elephant, and you do the whole taxidermy thing. You get yourself, like a toilet brush made out of the tusk or something, and they would take the foot and they'd taxidermy it into an umbrella stand, and you just put your umbrella in there, and that's what they did. And this fella took one around, and he would press it into the mud like it was an animal walking, just for funs and jokes and japes.
For the goofs and gaffs.
Yeah, for the laughs and the loves. So the Daily Mail found out this before they put this story out about Marmaduke finding them in the first place.
How did they find out also?
Yeah.
Whatever.
I studied the Loch Ness Monster, not journalism in the 1930s of Scotland.
Coming to you next on cryptozoology, reporting the 1930s.
Anyway, so the Daily Mail got hold of this information, made fun of him, and his reputation was very hurt by this. So what he did is he conspired with his son-in-law, who was a sculptor. And with this sculptor son-in-law, he made a little thing around a toy submarine, roughly the shape of the hump, the neck, put it in the water, photographed it, and sent it to the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail ran with it, but actually they themselves didn't claim to. They had a patsy by the name of Robert Kenneth Wilson. He was the one to send the photo in. He was the one taking the heat for decades on this. And this hoax was, for all intents and purposes, a success for decades until the son-in-law, the sculptor of the model, had a deathbed confession in 1994. Now, I know deathbed confessions are sketchy sometimes, but at the same time, these pieces do fit. He was the son-in-law to Marmaduke Wetherell, and Marmaduke Wetherell was the guy who did this, and the son-in-law did know Robert Kenneth Wilson.
That's a juicy
right?
deathbed secret.
It's one of those things, like, I'm excited that that's the story of the hoax because it's still a fun story.
It's still really cool, and a lot of effort went into it. And actually, so for the patsy, they didn't even name him initially.
Right.
That's why they called it the surgeon's photo, because this guy, he was he was a gynecologist in London, so he was the surgeon.
If they called it the gynecologist photo instead, would that have made Nessie not take off, or would it make Nessie a feminist icon?
I don't know.
Both. It's the 1930s, so
at the time, no.
Definitely not one of those.
At the time, no, but
Definitely
nowadays, maybe. The Babadook became a gay icon because they accidentally put it under LGBT movies on Netflix, and Tumblr thought that was hilarious, and I agree, because that's really funny.
Yeah, that is fucking hilarious.
Hashtag Nessie for feminism.
Yeah, so honestly, I always thought Nessie sounded like a feminine name.
It is. Isn't
I think it is. Well,
Bigfoot is. But also, the another question that comes up around that is why the 30s? Why was that such a big time for it? And again, some people say, oh, well, cameras were more readily available and all that. But what also comes to light, as I mentioned earlier, there's only one road going on the shores of Loch Ness, and it was just across the southern side, I believe, between two towns. And it didn't even have a good view of the loch. It was through the hills and everything. But in 1933, they began building a road along the northern side of the loch, which required a lot of blasting, a lot of explosions, making loud noise, debris flying into the loch. And around this time, you started seeing Nessie. Maybe just an animal that had been trying to figure out what the fuck's going on right now, because I was sleeping for 3,000 years. All right, so with that, though, we do have the argument posed. You know, everyone likes to think that maybe there's a supernatural bend to it, but we like to play by Occam's razor here. If you hear hoof prints, it's horses, not zebras, unless it's zebras.
It could be zebras.
We're going to go along the idea that Nessie is an actual animal and perhaps was stirred up in the 30s. And with actual animals, a number of questions come up, one of those being how it's fed. And I believe our good friend Jimmy Buffett Sam.
Hold up, I got a quick question. So is this like legit how it's gonna be fed? Because there's part of a story that it's actually part of the Grant story of like how they try to throw it in.
What?
They like how it was feeding. They said they found goat carcasses around the area of the sighting.
Yeah, but I will say feeding on water meats, non-aquatic, food is probably incredibly important to understand because that does shape the mouth of Nessie.
True.
Right, yeah.
I mean fish have teeth. You got your bluefish, you got your some bass, they kind of have teeth a little bit, so it makes sense. But for the most part, you have a couple different species in Loch Ness, and as said before, very peaty. It's got an incredible amount of lack of light in the loch, so that also it's very dirty. It's probably high mineral. I haven't read any papers that can confirm that, but I would assume due to that amount of organic matter, there's probably a good amount of life that could sustain itself in Loch Ness, especially since it doesn't freeze at any point. Now, what you mostly have is you have the European eel. You have the European sea sturgeon. You have the three-spined stickleback. You have some northern pike there, which are heavy predators. You have the Eurasian minnow, some brook lamprey, along with the eel for kind of roach types. We have the familiar Atlantic salmon, a tropical fish. You have the sea trout, the classic brown trout, and also the Arctic char. As well as plenty of different types of plankton that several of these species will go after that I've read about in I believe it's David Martin, which is part of Loch Ness in the Moor project, which started to define the ecology of what different things go after. Because I was thinking, big picture about Loch Ness, if something were to live in there that we didn't know about, what could it be? Obviously, we've decided it's probably, we'll get into this later, but it's probably not a plesiosaur. So, what could it be? What could it be feeding on? And you have different levels of ecology here in this lake. You have kind of suckers and stuff like that, like the eel, the lamprey, and then you start moving up to the stickleback, the minnows, the trout, and then you start moving on, well, actually the char's in there too, and then you start moving on to, salmon, larger trout, pike are big eaters, and definitely a lot of these will target different things. I believe the Martin article that I read describes the char going as opportunistic feeders for the different types of plankton within the loch.
What does that mean?
So it seems
Opportunistic feeders.
They will go after. They'll change what they're eating. Much like the hipsters of today, we have taken the price of offal and like oxtail, beef tongue, and we've made them skyrocket because what was once before a meat nobody wanted to eat, now they're very fancy.
It's pretty much all cuts of lobster was that.
Lobster, yeah.
Everything in barbecue.
Yeah, lobster used to be.
Everything that is like a bitch to cook and somehow delicious went from being $1 a
Caviar
piece.
was for the poor folk.
There's a law in Massachusetts that you're still to this day that you're not allowed to feed your family lobster every night of the week. Because the poor people would just go and grab lobsters off the beach and feed them people that, but that's not healthy. That's just all the food they could get.
Oh my god!
Because no one wanted lobsters.
They were just everywhere.
Yeah,
I mean, people are opportunistic feeders. And one thing that makes me think about that is the possibility, because although there is studies that have shown, and I will say, I forget John, do you remember the author of that article that I had read? Is there enough food for Nessie? It was a hilarious article to start off, and I'm going to go on a little tangent here, but I love it whenever I read a research article and the abstract or the introduction starts off with like this little anecdote, because it's almost like you have all these scientists that are just like, I'll show my fucking 5th grade English teacher, I know how to write. And this guy, it's a great article, but he starts off, and apparently his kid comes home from school, and it's just like, our teacher told us why Nessie isn't real. And the dad's like, you fucking idiot. Of course Nessie's real, you stupid boy.
This reminds me of so many like flat earth things I've read where it's like, my kids came home and said they saw a globe. How do I stop them from learning these lies?
I hate depth. When I look at a globe, I see a circle, you idiot. But it's a very good article. It does go into the fact that, and John and Joey, Charlie, you guys can all confirm this for me. Loch Ness feeds into the ocean, correct?
It's true.
Eventually.
I learned that last time.
So a lot of these species are hard to track because they're constantly moving. Of course, they're sea trout, Atlantic salmon. Sorry to cut you off, but just all these different types of fish are constantly moving throughout the ocean. So I don't think it's unrealistic that, maybe at one certain point, yes, but if you think of things linearly and less of a like first dimension of like, at this point in time, there's these many fish. If you think of it over a time period, there could be enough fish to feed a large monster, I believe.
Also, another thing to think about is it does eventually the system does feed into the ocean, but it also, all the locks feed into each other, which also confuses things a bit as far as, sightings.
Absolutely.
Other locks have throughout history other stories like this. Different areas in Scotland. I don't have the details off the top of my head, but like there's a story of like a wicked worm back in the day.
Oh, a what?
That's what it said. A wicked worm.
A wicked worm.
W-Y-R-M,
No.
I believe,
it was a
right?
W-O-R-M.
What?
It was not a mythical
the
worm.
Elastic
It was just a
bullworm.
giant tubby
Alaskan
boy.
bullworm.
Yeah, the Alaskan bullworm.
Gave everyone
It
the
was
big,
heebie-jeebies.
fighting
pink,
for fucking
and fuzzy.
Scotland. But the
Or
point
hairy.
being that they're everywhere in stories and stuff. It's not just there. Like the lock system has a lot of interesting stories like that throughout, which also leads to the idea that if it is a moving creature, it has more of a chance to feed.
Absolutely.
It vacations in other locks.
Yeah, through
Yeah.
the streams.
Either that or other things are taking vacations there.
Yeah, fair point. Which
You know.
given trout and salmon, that's pretty much a positive.
That one's definitely happening. Although I feel like if Nessie were to just stick in the lock, we would probably find out about it. But there are a couple species that are rare enough and possible, and even some other things that I've thought about. Actually, Joe, you spurned on with our little joke about Nessie being 6 feet wide. That I started looking into that I can bring up in a little bit when we discuss what could Nessie be if not a plesiosaur. Because there's
6 foot wide tube.
Yes.
Well, there's a lot of richness, kind of. I mean, actually, yeah. For predators, this seems like the type of zone where, looking at all these, if we were to take out the eel, for most part, the minnow, the char. After that, maybe, smaller trout we can take out, but a lot of those other animals are predators, which would be, if we're talking about something the size of Nessie would want to feed on. When you think about animals, you think of, the what's it eating plankton, and then a bigger fish eating that, and then eventually you get up to salmon, you got an eagle coming down and eating like 5 of those a day. Actually, I don't think that's how much eagles eat. I don't know
That
about
would be
eagles.
astoundingly that's a lot. It takes a lot of energy to fly down and catch one.
You ever see a fat eagle?
I wish. Now I
No, that would be sick.
I'll tell you what I'm Googling once we're done with this, though.
But think about like how often you see birds of prey like that are they're somewhat more rare. I mean, eagles aren't extremely rare in the tropics. I mean, I see them on my way home from work a lot, but
So not the actual tropics.
That
what are you saying?
What?
No, I live in the tropics.
Sam lives in the tropics. The tropical
the tropics.
Manchester. But going off that, that's actually just an overall belief I have in cryptozoology is that if these are predator animals, we're not going to see them as much. You don't
There's
see
less.
predators as often. There's less of them, and they are not. It is not keen to their survival.
It's good at its job.
Yeah, if it's not, it's not conducive to them sticking around if they're just showing up, being like, "Hey guys, you like these toes of mine? I'm Bigfoot."
I mean,
That's what it sounds
we can even take this to like a real world standpoint. In maybe not. Well, you know what I mean. Like something that is a little bit less.
More concrete.
Yeah, a little bit more concrete,
Less speculative.
Yeah, John, you and I used to go to the University of Vermont, and their mascot
I
is
will
the
not confirm nor
catamount.
deny this.
Okay, so that's confirming it. You have the catamount, which now half the fucking state is like, no, they're still real. Half the state says no. Back in the 30s, they were.
Catamounts are real. They're just out west now.
I know, but I'm talking about like in that area.
Oh, right, yeah.
But I'm saying, like, for a real world example, I have never talked to anyone in Vermont that is like, yes, here's my catamount. I shot it. It's on the wall now. And they're like, oh, well, it might have been here, but we made a statue instead. And that's, I feel like, something that is probably smaller than Nessie. We don't know that, but it's something that would require less food. It has a bunch of different animals that are similar to it. So I think that if Nessie doesn't exist, then what do you say about all these other animals that don't exist anymore? We've done a lot to the earth that maybe during the 30s, when cameras became more possible, like, you would have the ability to see something that could be represented as Nessie, but nowadays you just can't. It's gone. We ruined that with World War II.
Let's look at Nessie as a blood and bones monster that is around right now.
What if
How
it's made
could
out of
that be?
cartilage and doesn't have bones?
I mean, it probably is, given that.
It's not.
What?
It's not?
It's not. I don't want it to be.
Okay,
All right, done.
That's fine.
It's not.
Anyway,
Bony fish.
with any submergible being, you have to wonder, how's it breathe? And, there's always the option that it's a fish and it uses gills and whatever wonderful thing they do.
I don't like that.
It could be more of a whale-like thing. It could be doing more of a mammalian thing where it comes up for air and it, I always thought, people said, how come we don't see it that much? If it is a plesiosaur, if it has the neck that we see, why couldn't it just boop its head above the water there? Just like look like a frog floating with just the nostrils, come back down. But another thing that I've seen in a number of sightings, smaller ones, less big stories, is that Nessie appears to be hairy, which could mean a lot of things, but also the author of this book, Tim Dinsdale, who's like the authority on the Loch Ness Monster, he brought up a breed of frogs called the hairy frog. And what they do is they, like amphibians, they can absorb oxygen.
Yep.
And the way they do it is they have growths, I guess, on their skin that looks like hair. And that increases the surface area, meaning there's more absorption of oxygen, so they can stay underwater longer. If that's the case for Nessie, we've solved a big question, is how come we don't see it every time it needs to breathe? Beyond that, I don't know enough about air intake.
Yeah, I believe that is called, and I did have a Wikipedia because I was doing a little bit of research, but that would be breathing through like a mucous membrane.
Exactly.
And I want to say that, and this is probably completely wrong, so shout out to us at The Truth is Stupid at Twitter to yell at me. It's very possible that these fish could have breathed through that mucous membrane, and a lot of pre-lungfish, I believe, did this, which would move it up in time to being something that could occur. That's it. That's the end of my sentence.
All right, let's hear about land sightings, because one big thing is that there are a slew of stories of Nessie being on land.
Oh yeah, Nessie loves that damn land, and Joey loves those damn papers.
Awesome. So In terms of land sightings, it's actually kind of interesting because there's an entire book on land sightings when it comes to the Loch Ness Monster called When Monsters Come Ashore, Stories of the Loch Ness Monster on Land by Roland Watson, which is actually a pretty good read. He does a lot of research here and takes a lot of the arguments pretty far as to, like, crafting both sides of the whether it's real or not. The land sightings are interesting because there's a lot of them, but the last place you would really think about Nessie is on the land. As soon as you think about it, it's usually the surgeon's photo in the water. So unless you saw Scooby-Doo and the Loch Ness Monster, which is a great flick, and I recommend it highly.
I did most of my research off that.
That's how I got a lot of my info as well. They have a cool little rock song with bagpipes in it while the Loch Ness Monster's chasing them around.
I forgot
very
about
interesting.
that.
Yeah, very cool.
That's
very
the
cool
second
stuff.
thing I'm Googling after this.
There's one story that takes place in the late 1800s where it talks about a kelpie or water horse, and that kind of leads its way into the land sightings of the Loch Ness Monster. This is a story of these two romantic teenagers from families who don't like each other. So classic, Romeo and Juliet situation there. They're watching the sunset and realize they have to get back because it's the night of the Sabbath, and that's important to not do anything on the Sabbath, especially not, bang the enemy. Or whatever. There's no eloquent way to put that.
It's the 11th commandment. Thou shalt not fuck thy enemy, neighbor enemy.
They're an enemy. Either way.
Oh, we're back in the loch.
we're in the loch now. Which coincidentally is what happened to them. They see a horse in the distance and they decide that'll get them back to their town fastest. So they get on top of this horse and it just beelines it right for the loch, and they can't get off with some mysterious rope holding on to them, as they say, and they drowned. So that's a good one that says, kids, stay away from the loch after sundown.
That reminds me a lot of like a lot of those classic, I feel like they came out like the 60s and 70s, those classic ghost stories where the teens are down on Lover's Lane.
Yeah.
And then the hook-handed man's there. It's always kids trying to fuck, and then the murderer comes.
and then they don't.
It's good to, humanity doesn't really change. Every good horror story is about please don't fuck.
It's never be fucking. Yeah, it's like the Kelpies. What is that? Yeah, it's 1896.
Damn.
Was when that came forward. But that's also part of the water horses and what have you. So the first actually big land sighting was from the Spicers, Mr. G. Spicer, who wrote to one of the newspapers, the Daily Sketch, and on July 22nd, what was it, 1933. So he wrote about this monster that horrified him when he saw it and described it very much as what you would think. It's this big beast of a terrible color that was, gray. It was moving pretty fast and jumped from the road back into the loch. Him and his wife together were absolutely horrified of it and wrote to many newspapers, circulated around a lot, thus kind of, starting up the big Nessie sightings. And then the cooler one where actually you hear a little bit more about what it looks like, and actually you can see in a picture here, it just looks like absolutely nothing.
Blobs.
It's just a blob. But one of the more reputable sources is from Arthur Grant. We mentioned this a little earlier. He was a veterinary student back in 1933 who also came across the monster while he was riding his bike, and he had some really great descriptions of what it looked like, since he has seen quite a few animals in his day. So there's one thing I'm just going to read directly from the book. I had a splendid view of the object. In fact, I almost struck it with my motorcycle. It had a long neck with an eel-like head and large oval-shaped eyes, just on the top of its small head. The body was very hefty, and I distinctly saw 2 front flippers. There were other 2 flippers, which seemed to be webbed behind, and there was a tail, which I estimate would be 5 to 6 feet long.
Wide.
The curious thing about the tail was that it did not, as far as I could see, come to a point, but was rounded off. The total length of the animal would be from 15 to 20 feet. And continues on saying that knowing something about natural history, I can say that I've never seen anything in my life like the animal I saw. It looked like a hybrid. So it could, interestingly enough, be just like this crazy looking animal. And he actually, drew a picture of it here, which looks very much like the Nessie we all have come to know and love. It's the plesiosaur.
I think I drew that exact same picture in 3rd grade.
I was just thinking that. Looks
it looks exactly like something you would draw as a
down
kid.
to he has one of those little V birds,
yep.
you know when
Yeah,
you little
yeah,
and draw on a picture and to show a bird you did a V. It looks exactly like that.
But basically, that's one of the best descriptions. People were giving him crap for it, also, which made him drop
Honestly,
out of school for a while. But
I was
yeah.
on his side, but if you're at school, you're in school to be a vet, and you're like, I don't know, you're wrist deep in a cat trying to fix it. It's a cadaver. They're only letting you practice. But then a guy just comes around and he's like, look what I saw. And it's a crayon drawing of a dinosaur with a V bird flying into the distance. You'd ridicule him too.
Yeah, but he said he's seen a lot of animals, so like
I've seen a lot of animals too.
Yeah,
you
we've
go to
all
the
I've seen at least 7.
you go to the zoo, you can fill out a whole checklist.
you're right.
I'm just saying, I was on his side.
The veterinary society said that it was probably just a hippopotamus.
Yeah, but considering his evidence is
It's a crayon picture of a dinosaur.
I mean, it kind of makes sense too, because like going off that like ribbing off people, if somebody came up to me and gave me this fucking like 3rd grader drawing of a dinosaur, and they're like, I found this, I would also be like, oh yeah, me too, bud.
Yeah, exactly.
And then just kind of walk away like, yeah, dog, nice hippo.
Fucking bet, dude.
Yeah. Finger guns out of the doctor office.
Yeah, I think that was the only picture that he had was the really cute drawing.
That is adorable.
But yeah, basically he was terrified of what he saw, and that description kind of fits exactly what you would expect with the Loch Ness Monster.
That's true. And going off of what you can expect of the Loch Ness Monster, there's a number of explanations that people have, many of them being other kinds of animals, and a few being natural phenomena that just cause disturbance in the water. One of them being seismic activity, given that it's on a 60-mile fault line. And another one being, and I thought this one was really interesting, despite wanting to believe in it real bad. There is because of the unique makeup of the loch with the peat and everything, and the trees that are on the shore of the loch, it's common for a tree to die and sinks down, but because of the whatever's in the water and the kind of sap, it will preserve it rather than rot away, which will cause the sap causes gas to explode or to release. It will then be trapped in the preservation until eventually the pressure's too much and this log comes shooting out the water. I've never heard of that happening anywhere else, and I think a good number, if you were sitting on the shore, you wouldn't think a log just shot out of the water and slapped down.
What if it's Nessie just tossing it out of its home?
See, there we go. I hadn't thought of that. The truth is
Debunked.
stupid. Damn. All right, fine. Nessie.
Case closed, guys.
So Nessie really doesn't want things in her swamp.
His or her. We shouldn't put a gender on it.
That.
Because you don't know. Nessie's a species, that's for sure.
You know what I think it is? Is that you call like a boat a she? It's like, oh, who's her captain, that type of thing.
And Nessie has been compared to a boat.
Exactly.
So.
I think somewhere in there. Yeah.
Does make sense. It
She
checks out.
seems a little effeminate to me, just in general.
I call my boat a big boy.
That's fine too.
This is my big boy, Bodie. Let's go ride. Hop on, gang. Yo ho ho. Let's sing a shanty in Bodie. My boy.
Bodie boy looking for
My
Nessie.
big boy.
My big boy Bodie.
Well, we've also so Bodie is also a possible explanation for Nessie, given how Sam would be with a boat.
I've also rode Nessie, so fuck off, John. Been there, done that in the tropics.
And so we move on to some other explanations as to what Nessie may be, which is largely just other kinds of animals. Anyone want to throw in what kind of animals it could be?
Yeah, there was 2 that I thought were hilarious. Just after the Arthur Grant situation, they came back defending that it was not the Loch Ness Monster. Instead, it was a hippopotamus. And another suggestion was that it could have been a walrus. So I don't really know much about like their geography, but it doesn't seem to check out. Sam?
As a tropical man, I've never seen a hippopotamus or a walrus in the Massabesic.
Boom.
I would say a walrus is more plausible than a hippo.
Yeah, they're definitely not probably going to be in the same place though.
Given
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that was their suggestion. They're like,
well,
a dinosaur.
there was one,
Absolutely not. It was a hippo.
I think my absolute favorite one was
Which is about right.
one of my favorite stories of what Nessie might actually be. Is they explained that the craned neck people see rising out of the loch may be the trunks of swimming elephants.
I feel like that's pretty legit. Not gonna lie.
I mean,
But
I've seen.
Why?
Fuck off.
I've seen.
Why?
No.
The shape is exact.
Okay,
The thing
no. That's not the question. Why are there elephants in the loch?
Prank.
No one
It's
can
a
hear the
prank.
defensive stance that Joey just took. Like he was about to tackle Charlie in a chair.
I'm always
Whoa.
like a left tackle going after a defensive end, just like ready to plant.
Fucking. I've seen pictures of swimming elephants just after reading this, and I get it. I still don't get why it would be in the loch.
maybe.
And why they would be going to this fucking area. Like, I can understand a zoo being in like a big town, but prior to this, it's like no one went there.
Not to mention, I'm assuming there's at least a bit of a shoreline here. Why is a non-aquatic animal going deep enough that it is fully submerged except for its fucking snorkel of a nose?
Okay.
It's good water.
Perhaps it was going to see if it could get to the middle of the lake.
I mean,
It was challenging itself.
Yeah, just kind of for fun.
Charlie, you're
Testing
not
the
an elephant.
boundaries.
That's
You
what
get-
you would do.
No, that's
Well,
what an
neither are
elephant
you.
would do. They're very smart.
Oh, fuck.
Jesus
The truth is stupid, guys.
Christ. Fair enough.
Every argument will be fought by the truth is stupid.
Seriously, we really backed ourselves into a corner with
We
that
really
one.
did.
Shit.
You know what? Maybe the elephant's plausible. The truth is stupid.
I mean, fair enough. That if the truth is stupid enough that this might be real, it's stupid enough that the least plausible explanation also could be just as real.
Yeah. Because if we're saying that an elephant, I could see if Nessie had one sighting, I could see elephant, but multiple sightings, that's multiple elephants challenging them. I don't think they're all ready for CrossFit or some
What if
shit.
they're
Like they're not
What
there.
if there's a feral pack of
Scottish elephants.
Scottish elephants who are training for the Elephant Olympics?
Wow, now that's a lot of
Yes.
assumptions right there.
The truth is stupid.
Yeah.
The truth is stupid.
I believe Loch Ness more. Like Nessie herself is much more realistic than the like. I get it. Cool Runnings hit the scene, and we all thought anything is possible in the Olympics, but I don't think this one is.
I don't know if I would compare cool runnings to a pack of feral elephants training for the Olympics.
What would be the distinction between a feral elephant and a normal elephant?
One of the ones you can
don't know.
ride.
Well, the ones you can ride, the
Foam.
difference is a significant amount of
Foam.
abuse.
Yeah.
A lot of
I think it's the way they look at you.
Foamy elephants.
foam elephant.
All right, I think we've talked these elephants to death.
Yeah,
Among
we're poachers
Save the
now.
elephant.
yeah, exactly. Well, the thing is, if the poachers just talked them to death, they'd probably have long enough to build up the population in the interim.
Nah, elephants never forget all the inane details about what you did.
They
last
will
summer.
die from information
From
overload.
boredom.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll be like, "Oh my god, I already have heard this story. I've never forgotten, Terry."
I would fucking hate. I would hate being friends with an elephant because you ever start telling a story to someone and realize you told it to them before, and this time you lied
John,
about
you
a bunch.
did that to me for 3 years.
No, but then you lie about a bunch after, and like
No, you just told me the same boring story.
I tell stories. No, that's because I didn't have to lie to you. You figured out I was born pretty quick. I said one interesting thing, and you're like, "We're friends now," and then it just all died.
I'm easy.
I'll say.
I'm sorry for cutting you off. Continue.
I don't even remember where I was going. So obviously, the most common explanations and the easier to rationalize is just a giant version of whatever's already in the loch. Eels already get pretty big. Sturgeon, big ass fish. Catfish get huge, and it's not unheard of for there to be a catfish in the loch.
No, and I mean, and this draws back to when we said, what if Nessie is 6 feet wide?
Oh.
Okay.
We all had a good
Oh,
laugh.
yucked it.
But that's when the my fucking walnut brain started going, and I started looking up the ocean sunfish.
Oh God.
Well, here's the thing. They have been recently spotted in great amounts in Scotland.
What?
Yes, because the ocean sunfish prefers degrees between 12 and 25. Mid-August, that's Celsius.
Right.
Mid-August, that is the temperature of the loch. I think it's very possible. And then you also have all the other types of fish that exist within that order. Now you think of you can start off from something very plausible, like it could be a sunfish, and we're just looking at it from the wrong angle. You know, a basking sunfish, they're not going to live there. They definitely not going to live there. It gets way too cold in the winter. They could migrate. You might see a couple that just somehow made it up the river. I don't think that's impossible at all.
Fair enough.
And on top of that, you do have that order of fish, which have what is called I'm going to butcher this, operculum, which is, it is a series of bones that are found in bony fish, things that are found in the loch currently, that do not need to even swim to get water into their gills. It's kind of like the bone that some fish have. All they have to do is kind of like flip them side to side, and that gets the water flowing through. And that is a progenitor to the lungfish. And the lungfish straight up goes on land.
Right.
Oh my God.
So you have all these different... I mean, the three-spined stickleback, which is a big fish, that is a major population in the loch, has the operculum. It kind of has that. So it's not crazy to think either of these are options.
Well, that's not to mention either that would cut down on a massive need for food if it doesn't need to move to sustain itself like that. And it would...
Exactly.
It would also... shit, I had something. Oh, it would also explain... there's been tons of stories about radar and sonar going down. And there's one story where someone saw these, maybe 5 or 6, maybe 20-foot long things trailing the boat. And, that's always shown as evidence. But it also explained why you wouldn't see them either if they're not actively swimming around.
Exactly. And things like the sunfish, that is their thing. They like the sun. So, I mean, that one's a little bit less plausible. You'd probably see them more often, but as we started learning it as a science, it would make sense that maybe in the 30s people were like, holy fuck, what is that goddamn plesiosaur? But nowadays we're probably like, that's a sunfish. What? That's a sunfish.
As we now learn about science, in the 30s that say, oh look, it's a niche dinosaur type thing that we only know about because there's a magical monster that's based off of it.
I mean, possible. Like the 3 fucking people, one of them like got ridiculed out of veterinary school, the other one was like, I fucking lied, I'm dying. So it's possible that like at the time they were like, look at that fucking weird thing, what if it was this instead? That would be cool.
When I'm thinking of the right fish, but when a sunfish like basks, does it lay on its side?
Yeah.
Yes.
But
there
those
are several pictures. Sorry.
They got those weird flippers too. That could explain the neck sticking up if they're like flapping their flippers on the side.
Exactly. If you look at some sunfish, I mean, they still have to like move. They're not going to just be like, all right, I'm done bathing. Time to sink. Down to the depths I go. They could very well just kind of lift up that flipper, and for a second it would look, from certain angles, like a neck. I mean, they're fucking huge.
They are.
It's a big ass fish.
Have you guys seen that video of like the really Boston guys finding
baby
one?
Fucking whale.
That's all I can think of right now.
It's a baby fucking wheel.
baby wheel. Jay.
When I was living in Vermont, I'd watch that when I'd get homesick.
Really?
It's a baby fucking whale, Jay. We
Jay,
gotta call the aquarium.
That thing's hard, kid.
An aquarium.
But
this is going on Fox, but anyway, that's the Loch Ness Monster.
That explains a lot of. There are other sightings that specifically say it goes straight down, but that does explain a lot.
Question.
Yeah, I mean, Oh yeah.
Is there a water salamander? Because I keep thinking of this one animal that kind of looks like a salamander, and it has those like wavy, or the bones for the gills, so it doesn't have to move.
The axolotl?
That could be it.
Well, technically,
Yeah.
yeah. They don't get giant, but the one of the proposed explanations is in Asia, you'll see giant salamanders. They're not Nessie sized, but it's also not unheard of in, accepted zoology that there are giant salamanders. I don't know the number off the top of my head.
Would that
but
thing
they're
live in the
big.
water?
Salamanders, they're amphibious, but they spend a lot of time in the water. The problem I have with that explanation is with they're just given salamanders, there's usually at least a decent amount of them, and they do spend time out of water. And, usually around here you'll find them under rocks, but they don't have enough of those rocks for them to be under without us noticing.
Right, yeah.
Now I do, and we can kill the sunfish discussion after this, but looking on Wikipedia, they have been seen maximum size up to 14 feet.
Well, that's pretty
That
much
is a
the average
fish.
Nessie
Fin to
size.
fin. That's a Nessie-sized
yeah.
fish right there, boys.
Shit, I think we just came up with a real good explanation as to at least what modern Nessie sightings might be.
Is that what Saint Columba banished away, where he just got really scared by a sunfish?
He saw
I'd get
this
scared by a
dumbass-looking
sunfish. They're
fucker.
huge.
That guy was killed by
They're
a
big.
sunfish. Do they interact with people?
Do
Not
any
really.
fish
Yes,
interact
they
with
mainly speak in riddles.
I would totally believe a sunfish would swim up like that. That sounds like a shitty like French fable where like a guy's drowning and a sunfish comes up and is like, "If you can answer me these riddles 3."
Riddle my piss. So no, I mean like, yeah, there's 2 sunfish. One of them's just like, we are twin brothers. I can only speak the truth, and my brother can only speak lies. And that's when Columbo was like, God said, get the fuck out of here right now. Just get the fuck out of my face. Stop hurting my friend. And his friend is like on the other side of the river, like, yo, Colin, it's fine.
So
Colin, Robbie.
so a sunfish and a rabbi wander into the Scottish Highlands.
They say, I have some 3 riddles. Another possibility that I've seen is the Greenland shark, which is pretty commonly, people like that one a lot. It is a fish that does live for an extreme amount of time. I think it's hundreds of years. I think it's the lifespan of a Greenland shark.
I remember getting real excited over this like a year ago. They found one. Actually, the way they do carbon dating on them is pretty neat because they have a parasite, almost all of them, in their eyes. Like the second they're born, it infects their eyes, and the lens just never ages at that point. It's done taking anything in. And so they're blind. Yep. They're in the darkest water anyway, but they're blind. And so when they got this fish, they used the lens of its eye and carbon dated it conservatively from the 1600s.
Wow. What?
This is like last year.
No.
Yeah. Dude, ocean things live forever. They found a bowhead whale with a 200, 300-year-old harpoon in its head like in the last 10 years.
Wow.
This is why I don't
Maybe
go
it was
in
a
the water.
zombie.
It was...
Oh, possible.
Yeah, the ocean terrifies me.
I don't go near it.
I mean, just recently, I think in 2017, they found a 512-year-old like Greenland shark that people are just hanging out with.
Yeah.
Wow.
But tell us more about the Greenland shark in Loch Ness, Sam.
Yes,
it's just that the temperate region makes sense. Greenland shark's been seen around the area. You have that inlet from the sea. It doesn't have the neck.
It doesn't have the
No
neck.
neck.
Yeah, that's right.
But it is, from certain angles, I could see somebody, and by somebody I mean like the 5 people that are like, I got a picture of it, here it is. I hate my veterinary school. So it is possible that is an option as well. There's nothing really fun about it. It's just that's also an option.
There's also there's too many holes just based off the few things I know about sharks being like, the water in Loch Ness isn't even brackish. It's not even kind of sustaining saltwater life. It's pretty much just fresh water.
Yes, it is that fresh.
I want to know what
goodness.
these people are seeing on land. Because like there's a lot of plausible options for things that they see in the water, but what is it, a leathery cow?
Well, actually, one of the most common
With a neck.
sighting, like pretty much with any lake monster, sea serpent, whatever, seals tend to be the common debunking agents.
Oh, that's actually funny. That's exactly how it's described as moving.
Eel-like?
No, not eel-like. It's described as moving like a seal, where it kind of like propels itself from its back flippers and has the front two for stabilizing itself. If you've ever seen like a sea lion or something move, it's described as moving like
Well, that does make sense. And as far as water sightings, people say seals because if you were to watch like a group of seals, I don't know what you call a group of seals, but a group of seals swimming together, they're a lot of times in a line and they arc their body up at the same time, so it looks like a sea serpent, like squiggling through the water.
Aha.
And people say that. And also, and going from your standard seal, we get to delve into here.
Oh boy.
Thanks, Daddy.
Drum roll, please. Put it in post.
We have a cryptid that could be the Loch Ness Monster that isn't the quote-unquote Loch Ness Monster. We have what is known as the Heuvelmann seal. This is a long-necked seal. It is...
Can you say that again for me?
Heuvelmann seal. A long-necked seal. It has been described to look almost identical to a seal, but with a long neck, similar to a horse or a camel. The way it acts as it goes about its dastardly deeds is pretty much like a seal, except with a neck similar to that of a horse or a camel. And there has been a long history of sightings from sailors dating back to 1846 of seeing a fearsome beast come across the view of their bow, barreling through the ocean, acting as though it were a seal with the long neck of a horse or a camel.
I'm having flashbacks.
A horse or a camel.
Honestly
Either one.
don't have real
flashbacks.
memories.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I remember.
The long horse
The
seal.
long horse seal
With the neck.
is
With the neck of a
an
horse or a
often
camel.
proposed option, which really kind of seems like a meet in the middle between, okay, we like science, you like fun, let's call it here. This is a compromise.
I love this animal. I love the
What
description.
about
of
the
it.
long neck Greenland
The
shark?
long, that would be genuinely
God, yeah.
terrifying because no
Could
matter
you imagine
Yeah.
of that?
a lo-
Oh my
a long necked
gosh.
seal is just a variation of a known animal. A long necked Greenland shark is a monster.
That is because. I mean, sharks are fast also, and now it
And
can
now-
just move its neck at you.
Imagine you're out on a boat.
Resident scientist Joey, put it on the books. Sharks are fast.
Sharks are fast.
Fucking
It's been said for millennia. Sharks are fast.
imagine the scene from Jaws where the shark jumps up on the boat and eats Robert Dreyfuss. And instead of that, he doesn't even have to jump on the boat, and it just cranes its neck.
him off.
It goes with the speed of a shark and the stealth and the anger of that shark, and just chomps down and like walks
Of the
away.
same shark?
Of the-
the stealth and the anger of that same shark.
Of the same shark. I'm not talking because if I say sharks, it's not the Jaws shark is a profound shark.
The Jaws.
That's a vigilante shark. It's after one thing and one thing only.
Batman.
It's basically Batman of sharks.
It might
Yeah.
be. Maybe it's getting at us for overfishing.
Who knows? It could be a land shark.
Anyways, folks, from the land shark, we would like to bring in the possibility. We've talked about fish, we've talked about monsters, we've talked about everything, but we have only delved slightly into the world of the paranormal. And taking off from the long neck seal, would like to propose the alternative that maybe Nessie isn't an animal. Maybe Nessie is something completely supernatural, which you will find out on in the next week's episode of Beast of the Week podcast.
Pity claps.
Thanks for... you guys really helped me out with that one.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hey, no problem, bud.
We're here for support.
You're our Coach Carter, you know?
Th-
We got a clap for you.
Once again, thanks for listening to the Beast of the Week podcast. We hope you enjoyed our first 3 episodes, and stay tuned next week to learn about the supernatural origins of the Loch Ness Monster. From us to you, I'm John Cannon.
O.J. Simpson.
Yep.
Whoa. Bud, too soon.
Can you like actually do it?
Yeah.
Leave this in.
Thank you from Joe McGlinchey.
Charlie.
I didn't hear Charlie at all.
Oh my gosh.
He said Charlie.
I can't hear you.
Sam Harris.
Awesome.
Tune in next week. Thanks, folks.